There are alien abduction stories everywhere you look. And while many of them can seem fabricated or like hoaxes, there are always those small amount of cases that are hard to deny. Whether it be for the evidence provided or the genuineness of the people telling it, these alien abduction stories have become the standard for this type of topic. And today we're going over what is probably considered one of the most likely alien abductions of all time, and that is the abduction of Barney and Betty Hill. So this is Sinister Stories, and join me as we dive into a UFO case that is yet to be solved. Our story takes place on September 19th, 1961 in New Hampshire. Barney and Betty Hill were driving down the highway towards Portsmouth on the way back from vacation in Niagara Falls. About halfway through their drive, they noticed a large UFO in the area. It seemed to be flying around the moon, and they noticed lights coming out of the craft. The craft seemed to be moving at an incredible pace, and both of them were stunned. But the next thing they knew, they were arriving at their home. Now, it took them a while to realize that they had actually arrived at their home 3 to 4 hours later than they should have. After noticing that, Betty felt an unease she had never felt before. It was so much, in fact, that she decided to leave her luggage near the back door rather than unpacking everything. Not only that, but their watches seemed to never work again. Apparently, they also had strange impulses for absolutely no reason. Barney, for some reason, wanted to check on his genitals to make sure they were okay, even though nothing was wrong with them. But, as uneasy as they felt, they decided to let it go overall and just go to sleep. It was the next day when things began to get weird for Betty, since she started having very vivid dreams during the day. According to Betty, she had never had dreams this vivid in detail before, and she later stated that she probably never will. And these dreams happened during the day for about 5 days straight. She was so concerned with the dreams, she actually started to write them down. According to Betty, in her dream, her and her husband were driving down the highway when they reached a roadblock surrounded by 6 men. At that point, she lost consciousness and she woke up outside of a forest being dragged in by 2 little men. While being dragged in, she turned around and noticed that Barney was also behind her, but he seemed to be walking in a sleep-like trance. According to Betty, the men that were dragging her in were about 5 feet and that they wore skin-tight suits with red hats that almost looked military, but they had gray skin. Betty then said that she remembers walking into a big metallic craft where her and her husband would be examined. She was upset because her husband was taken away, but the leader apparently told her that if her and Barney were to be examined together, that the exams would take much longer. After she was alone, another entity walked in which Betty called the examiner, and he would be conducting all the tests. According to Betty, he was very calm-mannered and relaxed, and even went so far as calling him pleasant. Apparently, the examiner wanted to find the differences between humans and the occupants of the UFO itself. According to Betty, the examiner would test her eyes, her skin, her hair, and apparently put a needle into her navel, which caused her extreme pain, which he made disappear by waving his hand in front of Betty's eyes. After her exam, apparently she had a conversation with some of them, including the leader, and apparently they talked English, but it was very broken and very hard to understand. She was looking through some books with some very strange symbols on them, and the leader said she could apparently keep one, so she kept it close to her. Betty later asked the leader where they were from, so he pulled out a map of a star system. Now, of course, this was very important information, but Betty was never into astrology or anything like that, so this wasn't much info for her. Now, it was when they were leaving that apparently things got weird. Apparently, the men in the UFO got into some kind of argument about Betty taking that book with her. The leader later came up to her and said that she could not take the book, and in fact, the people in the UFO did not want her to remember the encounter at all. They were then escorted back to their car, where the leader told them to stay in the car until the UFO took off, so they did just that and continued their drive back home. Now, the Hills were so intrigued by this dream that they actually decided to get hypnosis, that way they could recall some of the events. Betty's hypnosis sessions were pretty much the same as her dreams, only for a few minor differences. Apparently, during hypnosis, the technology on the craft was different and they were released in a different way. Not only that, but the entities in the ship apparently looked slightly different than they did in her dream. Now, the big part about Betty's hypnosis is that she was actually able to sketch out the map that the leader showed her. And what's really weird is that apparently she drew the Zeta Reticuli system. Now, the Zeta Reticuli system is actually a star system that was not discovered until 1996. Now, several reports came out from the person who actually hypnotized Betty, and according to Mr. Simon, who was the interviewer, he said that she was very distressed during the entire thing and she would actually be crying during most of the hypnotic session. Now, Barney was also put under hypnosis, and apparently Barney had a lot of emotional fear against the entities in the ship. Simon even told him that he would not be able to recall anything if he was under that kind of stress, so Barney had to relax a little bit before continuing. While under hypnosis, Barney remembers regaining consciousness in front of the UFO. He tried to run away from it and get into his car and drive away as fast as possible. He said that while he drove away, he felt an unresistible urge to drive into the woods onto a dirt road. And that's when Barney met up with 6 figures on the road. That's when 3 figures came close to the car and told Barney to get out. They told him to relax and to close his eyes. Barney was actually very afraid and did not want to close his eyes, but they closed anyway with some kind of force. Now, Barney's description of the men were very similar to Betty's hypnosis. Both of them also stated that the aliens had this kind of mesmerizing stare to them, so much so that they tried to avoid eye contact at all costs. According to them, and I quote, "I felt like their eyes were pushing into my eyes." Now, Barney's description of the exam was not as detailed as Betty's because apparently he had his eyes closed the entire time, but he did state that they put a cup over his genitals and he thought that they took out a sperm sample. Apparently they had also inserted a tube into his anus, which they quickly took out. They looked at the inside of his mouth and they were counting the vertebrae on his spine. According to Barney, they were mumbling a lot and he couldn't really understand what they were saying, even though he did pick up the occasional English word. Now, they both stated that they tried to talk to them through some kind of thought transference. Now, both of them were not aware of the word telepathy, which is probably the best word to describe how they were communicating with the aliens, but that is what they stated. They also stated that when the aliens talked English, they would not move their mouths at all. Now, apparently after this whole ordeal, they were put back into their car as the UFO drove away and they went back home. Now, let's see what people think of this UFO case. The person who put them under hypnosis thought that it was some kind of hallucination that stemmed from Betty's dream. He claimed that Betty's dream had convinced her and she convinced her husband that they were abducted by aliens. Now, many people point to Betty's map as a big sign of evidence that they were actually abducted, since that Theta Reticuli system was not discovered until 1996. Now, some people live by this map and some people claim that it is just a coincidence that she guessed this star system. People think that she just put dots on the map and we just happened to find something that looked like the map that she had drawn. Now, many scientists have claimed that if there were aliens visiting Earth, it would most likely be from that star system, since it's not too far, relatively speaking. Now, Betty was very traumatized by the event that she tried to throw away the dress that she wore that day and found some kind of powdery substance on it. She said the powder flew off, but the stains of the powder remained on the dress, and they took this into testing. Now, according to the testing, the powder was some kind of protein water-soluble solution. And it was not acidic, which probably means that it did not come from Betty herself, so it could not have been urine or vomit. If you are interested in this test, I will leave a link for that in the description below. Anyways guys, what do you guys think? Do you guys think that Betty and Barney Hill were actually abducted by aliens, or do you think it was some kind of hysteria formed from the dreams of Betty? It seems that it can go either way. There is evidence for both sides, and it's not something that can be clearly proven. While I think most of us are on the fence about this abduction case, I think the beauty of this case in general is that you can't immediately shut it down like you can with other ones. And while having a healthy skepticism is very healthy, I think it is also good to have an open mind. Anyways guys, this is Citizen Stories, and thank you so much for staying till the end of the video. I really appreciate it. If you guys liked the video, be sure to drop a like. If you didn't like it, be sure to drop a dislike. And also be sure to comment down below if you want me to cover anything in particular. Until next time guys, make sure to stay safe, make sure to make good choices, and I will see you all in the next video.